All right, this is Algebra 1. We are in Chapter 1, Lesson 4, and we are working on Example 4. In this video, we're going to do Part B of Example 4, and I am on page 30 in your textbook. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy out my problem, which is this one right here. I'm going to say the absolute value of 4x minus 10 is equal to 2 times the absolute value of 3x plus 1. Now remember, when we have two absolute values, or when we have any absolute value actually, we're going to make two different equations. The first equation, we're just going to write everything that we see. In the second equation, we're going to need to multiply the absolute value by -1. So first, let's take care of the first equation. I'm just going to copy what I see without the absolute value bars. So I'm going to have 4x minus 10 is equal to, now this says 2 times the absolute value. So I'm going to write 2. And I'm going to put parentheses for the times. So 2 times 3x plus 1. All right, that's my first equation. Now I need to write the equation another time. So I'm going to copy the first one the same way, just exactly as I see it. 4x minus 10 is equal to, now remember, we have 2 times the absolute value. But remember, that second absolute value has to be multiplied by -1. We need the negative version of this. So this is going to look a little bit tricky. Let me first show you how we're going to write this. I'm going to write 3x plus 1. Remember, that part has to be multiplied by -1, but then the whole thing is going to be multiplied by the 2. All right, we're going to simplify that in a moment. Let's just go ahead first and take care of our first equation, because that's fairly simple to do. Remember, I just need to use the distributive property right there. So this side doesn't change at all. 4x minus 10 is equal to, all right, 2 times 3x is going to be 6x. 2 times 1 is 2. And I want to get all of my numbers on one side, all of my letters on the other side. I personally like to move the letters first, and I like to move the letter that has the smallest number. In other words, I like to move the variable that has the smallest coefficient. So I'm going to move the I'm going to move the 4x, and to do that, I'm going to subtract 4x, and I'm going to subtract 4x. There. 4x take away 4x is 0. That's what I want. 0 take away 10 is -10. And on the other side, I have 6x minus 4x. That is 2x. And then I've got my plus 2. So I have all of my letters, all of my variables are on one side. Now I just need to get all of my numbers on the other side. So I'm going to take away 2 on both sides. And I will end up with -12. Is equal to oops, what did I do that for? 2x. I'm going to divide by 2, and I get x is equal to -6. I'm going to check that in a moment. Let me just go over to the other side here. So what I need to do is I'm going to need to use the distributive property. So I'm going to use the distributive property to multiply this -1 through. Okay, so I will end up with 4x minus 10 is equal to 2 times negative 1 times 3x is negative 3x. Negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. Now, I'm going to need to multiply everything by that 2. So I'm going to use the distributive property once again. Let me just copy this side. 4x minus 10 is equal to 2 times negative 3 is negative 6x, and 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Now that I've simplified that side, I can start moving all of my letters. I want to move all my variables on one side of the equal sign. I want all my numbers on the other side. I personally like to move the variables first, and I like to move the one that has the smallest coefficient. So with that in mind, I'm going to move that negative 6x. It will be easiest if I do this first. So I'm going to add 6x over here, and I'm going to add 6x over there. Okay, this will give me 10x minus 10. This part becomes 0 and equal to negative 2. Now I'm going to add 10 to both sides. 10. And this becomes, that there becomes 0, so I'll have 10x is equal to 8. Divide by 10 on both sides. Divide by 10, divide by 10. I need some more space. Divide by 10 on both sides, and I get x is equal to 8 divided by 10 is 8 tenths. Now, your book might make that as a decimal, 8 tenths. You might have a fraction that's in simplest form, which would be 4/5. But I think our book leaves that as a decimal. Yes, it does. All right, so I believe that my answers are x equals negative 6 and x equals 0.8. Now, I really should check this first, because that was a lot of work, and I would hate to get it wrong on a test. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the negative 6 into the x values in the original equation, make sure I get something that is true. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the 0.8, make sure I have something that is true. So the first thing I'm going to do in order to check this is I'm going to need to rewrite the equation. Whoops, I really want that to be green. It didn't change. Okay, here we go. Let's check this. So my original equation was the absolute value of 4x minus 10. I'm copying this out of my book here, is equal to 2 times the absolute value of 3x plus 1. All right, I'm going to check the negative 6 first. So I'm going to say absolute value of 4 times negative 6, and then minus 10. And I want to know, does that equal 2 times the absolute value of 3 times negative 6 plus 1? Give myself a little space here. All right, 4 times negative 6 is negative 24. And then minus the 10. Negative 24 minus 10 is negative 34. The absolute value of negative 34 is positive 34. Let's check the other side. 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. And then I'm going to have a plus 1 there. And then I'll multiply the whole thing by 2. Negative 18 plus 1 is negative 17. I'm going to take the absolute value of that and then multiply it by 2. The absolute value of negative 17 is positive 17. Positive 17 times 2 is 34. So I can see 34 does equal 34. So that means I did find the correct answer here. X equals negative 6. I'm going to erase some of this here. Okay. Erase this. And erase this here. All right, now I'm going to check the 8/10. So I'm going to write out my equation once again, which was the okay, that's not ready. I need my pen, that's why. Pen. Color. Okay, absolute value of 4x minus 10 is equal to 2 times the absolute value of 3x plus 1. All right, and let's go ahead and put 0.8 in there. So I would say 4 times 0.8, and then I would subtract 10 is equal to 2 times 3 times 0.8 plus 1. All right. I'm going to take out a calculator for this one because this one's a lot of work. So let's take out a calculator and let's do 4 times 0.8 is equal to, that's 3.2, and then 3.2 take away 10 equals negative 6.8. So I have the absolute value of negative 6.8. The absolute value of negative 6.8 is just 6.8. All right, let's simplify the other side. Let me clear the calculator, and we have 3 times 0.8 equals 2.4, and then we're going to add 1 to that. Whoops, I messed up. I wanted to add 1 to that. So that's 3.4, and then I'm going to multiply that whole bit by the 2, and I get 6.8. So I'm going to get, well, this was absolute value of 3.4, and then I multiply that by 2, I get 6.8. So 6.8 does equal 6.8, and therefore, yes, I did find the correct answer here. So my final answers are x equals negative 6 and x equals 0.8.